Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to another episode of GEEXX Reads. Today I'm going to talk about the book Before They Were Hanged by Joe Abercrombie, an image of which you will see here. This is a hefty book. This is the second book in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. There will be some spoilers, though I'm not sure exactly what they are. In the first book, we're introduced to several characters: Logan Nine Fingers, Pharaoh, Baez, Dogman, Colonel West, Glotka, and Giselle, I think his name is. I'm trying to blank. There's so many characters in the book, it's hard to keep track of. But there are basically three main storylines going on. Logan Nine Fingers and Pharaoh are with the first of the Magi, Baez, and a couple of and Giselle, a couple of Baez's apprentice and their guide. They're looking for something called the Seed, which is a powerful magical item left over from the before times, from hundreds of years ago. Glotka is sent to, the Inquisitor is sent to the city of Davost to replace the Inquisitor there who disappeared mysteriously. That city is soon to be under siege from the GEEXX Empire because the Union Kingdom stole it from them, and so the Emperor wants it back. And Colonel West is dealing with the fact that there is an invasion from the Northmen. Logan Nine Fingers' old chieftain has declared himself king of the North, and is basically conquering everyone he can. Logan's old crewmen, dogmen, and Three Trees and the rest of them join up with the West to try and, because they're against Bethod, they're against the king of the North, blah, blah, blah. So there's these three different storylines going on: the search for the Seed, Glotka's Inquisitor going to Davost, and West and that group dealing with the impending invasion of the Northmen. The first book in the series, The Blade itself, introduced these characters slowly. This book kind of throws you into it, and you're bouncing back and forth between several people's perspectives. Logan, Giselle, and Pharaoh, you get three different perspectives. Their journey. Colonel West and Dogman are together. You get two separate perspectives of their stuff, and then Gluck is off by himself. So kind of being thrown back. I finished the first book a few months ago. Picking up this book after that gap, it was very hard to get into. And because of that, it took me a long time. It took me like 3 weeks to read this book. And normally I could have read it in less than one if I was really deeply into it. But it was one of those books where once I picked it up, I would read a couple chapters and be interested in it, but then I'd have to put it down to go do something else. And it was just hard for me to pick it back up again. It was hard for me to mentally get into the book. I found all three journeys interesting. But they were also I think this book is longer than it needed to be. It's a good book, but to me it felt like it dragged. I'll kind of go over the stories intermittently, separately. Colonel West is back in the Union Kingdoms, having to deal with all the bureaucracy of the aristocracy trying to run the military, and their incompetence. People who are appointed their positions by the king or by other people in government who have no right being where they are. They're just rich and wealthy people, and they're put in charge because they're rich and wealthy people. And Colonel West is actually competent in having to deal with these idiots trying to run a military campaign. And it goes very badly. It is a disaster. And you know it's going to happen. You can see it coming a mile away. There are some, and Dogman and the rest of that crew join him, basically to try and give them some advice, which people ignore because they're appointed military and not experienced military. There are some interesting moments in that story. I really like the way West's journey, his character arc is going. There are very interesting things that happen, um, some of which are good and some of which are not. We learned in the previous book that his family has a history of violence, of abuse. His father was abusive, and Wes learns that he has inherited some of his father's temper. He's not happy with that, because his father was abusive. So him not necessarily embracing it, but having it be part of him is something he has to learn to deal with. I won't say whether or not he does deal with it, but it comes out in certain ways that I, in some ways, enjoyed, in some ways found shocking, and it was interesting. Next, we have Glaucus being sent to Devoust. The head inquisitor of the city has died there. Glaucus is given a writ from the king. The writ basically tells him he is in charge of the city. He has special dispensation from the king and from the council to do whatever is necessary to find out what happened to the old superior, the old superior inquisitor, and to defend the city from the GEEXX invasion. Glaucus is one of those characters who is not likable. He is meant to be not likable. From the first book, we learn that he was captured by the GEEXX during war and held prisoner for 2 years and tortured extensively. He is a permanent cripple. He is in constant pain. And he just has so many emotional and mental scars from his years of torture that he's just not really a nice person. He is capable of being cold and calculating and ruthless to the point of just almost monstrousness. But there's a certain core part of him that remembers who he used to be, and the way things should be. And so he has these little moments of almost human decency that kind of bring you over to his side. He's really an unlikable character, and I find his whole dealing with the leaders of the city, I can't remember if it's a mayor or governor, but the mayor, the governor and the governor's son, the other members of the ruling council, how they've dealt with the city since it was captured, and how they're planning to deal with the invasion, and how he basically just comes in and sets them on their asses. I found I liked his chapters the most, in spite of the fact that he is supposed to be an unlikable character. The way he's written winds up, he's one of those characters you're not an unlikable character you find up liking. And for me, his chapters are my favorites. And then there's Logan and Giselle and Pharaoh and their group traveling up the first of the Magi. The journey is somewhat mysterious. They're basically traveling to the ends of the earth to find this thing that is supposed to aid them with apparently the GEEXX invasion is somewhat behind that is another of the Magi's apprentices. The Magi is labeled first because he was the first and strongest of this old powerful wizard's apprentices, and there was I think a dozen of them. I don't remember the exact number, but one of them has gone bad, so to speak, and is in the GEEXX Empire. His name is Khalul, and Beaz wants to get this weapon to use to try and defeat him. Pharaoh is she was also badly treated as a child. She was sold into slavery, into a brothel, and she just wants to kill as many GEEXX as she possibly can. She's just driven by hatred. Giselle is basically someone who was given a military commission because he was rich, and I've spoken about that. Beaz is a crotchety old mage. Logan is kind of dealing with some stuff from mentally from his past, he's trying to make the best of it. He's led crews before. He knows he has to try and make them a cohesive unit. They're all separate. They're all individuals doing their own thing and with no connection to one another. And he tries to make the best of it, to try and give them some group cohesion. And none of them seem to want anything to do with it. None of them seem to care. And that's the part of the book that really dragged me, because it is a long-ass journey. Now, I mean, granted, it is a long-ass journey. They're traveling across the length of the continent, across another ocean to get to where they need to go, through enemy territory. And there are good moments there. There are moments in that journey between the three characters that we get their points of view from, Giselle, Pharaoh, and Logan Ninefingers. And I like Logan. He's an interesting character. He is not, I mean, he's a northern barbarian. He's kind of like I guess you'd say like a Conan type of character, but not quite the same. He's a man who's done some violent things. He's a man with a violent past, but he's not a brute. He's simple, but not a brute, and not stupid. He's just not educated. He's spent his whole life living in the wilderness, in small towns and things like that. So he's not a man of the world, but he's competent and he's intelligent, and he knows what he knows. He's good at what he does. Giselle is, a pampered, arrogant, spoiled brat. Beaz is a crotchety old man who is used to being the most powerful man in the room. Quiet's his apprentice. Their guide is constantly talks nonstop about how awesome he is and won't shut up. And then there's Pharaoh. It's a diverse group. And one of the things that I do enjoy about this book, in all the various storylines, you can see that the characters are making decisions that are wrong, and not necessarily like violently wrong, but you can see that they're making decisions based on their own points of view, and you can see that point of view is wrong. A good example of that is like Pharaoh is making assumptions about why people are doing things, why they're interacting with her, and it's because of her traumatic past. She doesn't trust people. She, doesn't trust in hope or friendship or anything like that. And so you see her you see her internal monologue and why she's making the decisions that she's making, and you can see that they're wrong. She's making the wrong assumptions about the people, but like the other characters don't know she's making those decisions because of her traumatic past. They just think she's an annoying bitch, a cold-hearted bitch. So, like if this were like a modern movie, it would explain everything in detail to you, and there would be these revelations where people would explain that no, you're actually no, your thought behind that is wrong. I'm not trying to do that. They would explain everything, and it would all turn out fine. And it doesn't. I do like that about the way Joe Abercrombie writes these books. He's not overly explaining things to you. He's letting things develop organically. And, excuse me. And like I said, he's not like, it's not being all happy and shiny and sweet. These people are flawed, and they're allowed to have their flaws. They may be trying to fix their flaws. Some of them, Logan might be. Even, Giselle might be learning some of his flaws and trying to fix them. And the other characters whose points of view we see them trying sometimes to be better people. Sometimes, depends on the character. But I like the way this is written. It was, excuse me. Like I said, it was a bit of a slog for me to get through. Not sure exactly why. But it just for some reason, in spite of me liking it, sorry, I felt like a pizza, sucked in a piece of lint. It was just something that took me a while to get into. Once I did get into the meat of the story, there was a good chunk of the book in the middle that I really plowed through quickly. But from my personal opinion, I didn't like it as much as I can't say that. I did like the book. I think it's a good book. But for some reason, it didn't grab me as much as the first one. The first one I picked up, and I really I went through it in about a week. It was a pretty steady read. It wasn't a quick one. I didn't devour it, but it was a solid read. This one just didn't grab me the same way, and I think it's because it was a bit slower paced, and I don't know, there was just something about it that just did not set with me. It didn't really pull me in the way I would have wanted it to. It's still a solid book. It's still a solid, well-written book and a good sequel. There is a third book. I don't think I'll wait as long. Um, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a short book out of my shelf that I've read before that I can just skim through quickly before diving into the next one. But if you like the first book, I would definitely recommend this one. Just that it's a bit of a slower read and not quite as, doesn't pull you in quite as hard, but still a solid piece of work. As always, thanks for watching. As always, this stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.